Well, here I am, and welcome back to the little tiny homestead. Today we are going to be talking about starting seeds indoors, and I may be just a tad late on a few of my seeds. Today is April 2nd, and I really had planned to start my peppers at least in March, but we had lots of stuff going on with family, and so that did not occur. So here we are on April 2nd. And I plan to start my peppers and tomatoes today, which are really the only things I do start indoors. I have tried other things. I don't ever seem to have a lot of luck with other things like herbs and all of that. So a lot of the other things I just direct sow when the frost date is passed. Now, speaking of the frost date, in this part of Ohio, my last frost date is supposed to be May 5th. This is about between zone 5 and zone 6. And I always add a couple of weeks to that before I plant anything out that is frost tender, such as peppers and tomatoes and beans, all of those things. I wait until at least somewhere around Memorial Day, maybe a week before that. But I have had quite a bit of luck with that, and so I'm going to keep going with that process. Now, as far as other seeds go that are not frost tender, such as lettuce and a lot of the brassicas, I will be planting those, direct sow those in April. I know there's people who do peas in probably St. Patrick's Day, some of them in March, but I don't tend to do that. Sometimes the ground is actually frozen here and impossible to dig. So what I want to do is wait until April. I have on my list, on my little garden list, April 23rd, but we'll see how that pans out. It will be in April, and I hope to do a video in regards to that. But I kind of want to go through the seeds that I'll be starting this year, and especially the ones that I'm starting indoors, which, like I said, are the peppers and the tomatoes. So I'm going to bring those seeds out here, and we'll kind of look through those, and then I will kind of go through the process of how I start my seeds. And if you want to watch, stay tuned. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to pull out my seeds here. Okay, so I got my seeds in front of me. I know there's lots of ways to store seeds. I have these little file boxes that I currently use. I'm using these because that's what I have. And I keep one for, let's see, which one is this? That is the flower seeds. So I keep my flower seeds in one, and I keep my veg in another. And I do tend to keep them in alphabetical order. That seems to be the best way for me. So the two things I'm starting today are the tomatoes and the peppers. And I'm just going to pull out and show you what I am planning to grow this year. And maybe these are some that you have grown before or currently are this year. This, only a couple of them are brand new to me. So this cherry tomato, which is called Isis Candy Cherry from Baker Creek, I am planning to grow that again. That's a pretty good sweet cherry tomato. I am also going to be growing, this is called a Hartman's Gooseberry. It is also a cherry tomato, and can't really see the label there, but it's also a good tomato. One of my favorites, and if you check out Roots and Refuge, you also see this is one of her favorites. I don't know how to pronounce it. She pronounces it Dr. Witches. I say Dr. Weich's, but that's a big beefsteak or slicer tomato. This one is new to me. This one is called the Cherokee Purple. And I don't know if I found out about this one on the no, I don't think it was MI Gardener. It might have been Epic Gardening. So that sounds like it might be a good one. We'll see how it is. My husband wanted just a plain red cherry tomato, just traditional cherry tomato. And that's what this one, I believe, is Chadwick cherry. If you know anything about the Chadwick cherry, let me know, because I've never grown that one before. This I'm going to try. This teeny, teeny, tiny spoon tomato. It was free from Baker Creek, so why not? And I did this one last year as well. This one is a Thornburns Terracotta, and that is also a smaller slicer tomato. I am going to grow the Roma tomato because I think they're great for salsa, and I have this tape shut, so I kind of want to open this up for you. Really tape shut. Anyway, that's a Roma tomato, so we're going to be growing that again. Another new one to me is the San Marzano tomato. My son wants to grow them. They use a lot of them, he and his wife, and so I am going to grow some of these and give some to him and try them for us as well. I am going to try this one again, and I will get into the issue I had last year with this one, and it probably wasn't this variety's fault, but it was probably user error. Marglobe is a tomato, a very meaty, smaller slicer tomato that's really good. My mother always grew these, and so I love the taste of them. We're going to try Marglobe again this year, and I'll get into what happened with it last year. Okay, so that, I believe, are all my tomatoes. I am also going to be planting today and growing peppers. And so first one is a jalapeno, and this tastes just like a jalapeno without the heat, so we'll be doing that one. Shishito tends to be a sweet pepper, I believe, and it's very prolific, I've heard, so that'll be exciting. That's new to me. This is, I believe, a paprika pepper, and so I wanted to have some of these. This one is also new to me. Again, if you know anything about this particular one, can't pronounce it, but I'm growing that one. And then, let's see, the Ozark Giant, a red pepper, red sweet pepper. Habanada, not the habanero, which is hot. The habanero without the heat, habanada. Another red pepper, King of the North, new to me. And I also want to do some traditional jalapeno. And do I have another one in here? I think that might be it. I do also have this another red pepper. So I am going to get some green peppers too. I'm not sure what the deal is. I don't know if this may be a green pepper that turns red, is why I bought that one. So those are the peppers that I'm going to be doing. I'm sorry about the camera angle on the last bit there. But I'd forgotten a couple of tomatoes. These are seeds that I saved. This is a pink Tiffin Mennonite tomato. Is a pink colored tomato that is a huge beefsteak or big slicer tomato. It really is easy to grow. And then I also want to do the Sun Sugar. It's a yellow cherry tomato. So those are the other two I believe I forgot. And it's possible that I forgot other ones. I don't know. I got so many in here that it's very possible. So now that we know what seeds we're going to be planting, I am going to go over a few things that I do when I'm planting the seeds, just based on my experience and things that I've heard from other people that seem to work for me. The first thing that you need to think about is what soil you're going to use. Now, this is one of the mistakes I think I'm going to admit to. You can use compost out of your own compost, but keep in mind, sometimes your compost has some seeds in it and things that just aren't necessarily going to provide the best soil for you for indoor seed starting. It is great for outdoor use, but indoor seed starting, you're trying to get little baby seedlings. You don't want any competition for them. It would cause a lot of competition to use the compost from your own compost heap, and that's exactly what I did, and I had a lot of problems with that. I this year am going to use just a regular seed starting mix. I'm not going fancy. You can mix your own. I know there's lots of people who will tell you some great methods to mix your own. M.I. Gardner is one of them if you want to check out his channel for that. I may put a little bit of worm castings in there just for a little nutrition, but the seeds don't really need any nutrition right in the beginning. They will need it later, but they don't. They have what they need inside the seed to start with. So what I'm going to be using is this, just a plain old cheap, not really expensive at all, seed starting mix. Like I said, I'm not using the compost from last year. Now, another thing I did was I also rinsed out all of my pots that I used last year. I don't know if that's a problem at all, but I kind of took extra caution this year. The problem was I had grown some tomatoes for certain people that I told them this is the variety it is. And when I gave it to them, it did not turn out to be that variety. So one of the mistakes, using the compost, and maybe had some seeds in there that should not have been in there. The other thing that happened possibly was when some did not germinate, I planted other seeds in there, and then it's possible the original one had germinated. That's mistake 2, is replanting other seeds, another variety in a pot, and it got mixed up, and so, you know, not a good thing. So those are a couple mistakes I made. To start seeds, you can use anything. Now, I am going to use these pots. I bought these pots on Amazon. Honestly, you don't have to up pot if you start with a larger one like this. But I have done this, and my son actually gave these to me. I'm not going to do this year, but I'm going to keep this in mind for possibly another year. It's like it's an egg carton, and you can start seedlings in this. Keep in mind, though, you will have to up pot because these will not hold enough as the seedlings begin to get the root system going. So I'm using these for all of my starts. The other thing you want to remember to do is to use a seed tray that does not have holes in it, because you want to be able to water the seedlings from below. You don't want to water them on top. You can kind of overflow them. You might lose seeds. They're very tender and they're fragile. You want to make sure you give them a good start. So water them from below. Therefore, you have to have a seed tray that does not have holes in it, which is what I got this year. I'm sorry, I did grab one that does have holes, but I have other ones that don't have holes like this. These are ones you get at the greenhouse garden center where you can buy a flat of annuals. But they have ridges in them that are deep. They are just not good. They're not conducive. They're flimsy, pretty flimsy, not good for me. You can use anything you want, but keep in mind just a few of these little tidbits. I also use these cups for seedlings. Also a great way to do it. I did poke the holes in the bottom with my hot skewer. Anyway, so you can do that as well. Now, when I start my seedlings, I will be filling the pots and getting them wet, getting the soil wet before I plant the seedlings. Now, you might be thinking, why are you only putting 6 pots in a tray? It looks like it holds at least 12. That is true. But I am going overkill this year because of the seed mix-up that I've had actually the last couple of years. So I am going overkill. I'm only going to put 6 pots, one variety over here, one variety over here, and then maybe I can avoid all of the mix-up of the seeds. Okay, so you may have noticed that I am inside. It's chilly out today. If you have a heated greenhouse or you maybe live in a different zone, you might be able to start them in your greenhouse or outside, whatever. But I am starting them indoors, and I know it's going to be messy, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is this is very dry, and I talked about using some worm castings, but I think what I am going to do is just use this seed starter for now, and then I am going to, maybe as they get a little bit older, I might do a mixture with add maybe worm castings to each pot. We'll see how that goes. So I'm going to fill each pot, and I'm going to make a mess, of course. I'm going to tamp it down just a little bit, not a lot, just enough so there's no air pockets. Also, when I give it a water to start with, it will also get rid of some air pockets. So filling each of these. made a bit of a mess in here, so I'm going to take out the soil that's in the bottom of this tray. I'm going to take, and this is the only time that I will be watering them from above, just to get the soil moist. You want the water, at least I'm going to use the water lukewarm or tepid so that it's not super cold when you put the seeds in, or super hot. So I'm just going to water. I'm going to make a mess. Isn't this fun? Let that soak in a bit. The reason I do this is because, as you can see, it's very dry, and it takes a long time to soak in. The soil even kind of floats on the top, as you can see, because of the fact that it is that dry. It needs to be able to begin to, kind of like a sponge, absorb it and really pull that water in, as opposed to rejecting it. So, and there's a term for when your soil gets so dry and it won't receive any water, and I can't remember what that is called. I'll see if I can look that up and let you know. You can see it's beginning to soak in. Still very light, still not enough water in there yet. I want to wait till they're fully saturated. And you will also notice they are not absorbing or wicking any water from the tray, because the soil is way too dry for them to even be able to wick water from the tray. So they have to be moistened. And then once all the soil is moistened, it will, as time goes on and moving forward, be able to wick it from the bottom of the tray, because that, like I said, is the way we're going to be watering plants. Now we're getting somewhere. Getting a little bit heavier now. I want to let you know about is, as you can see, it looks very wet on top, but if you go underneath, there's still a lot of dry, and so that has to be saturated. Just because it's wet on top is deceiving. The same holds true when you are watering in the summertime. Make sure that you are getting at least an inch or two down into the water. You can easily water the top, but if you aren't soaking it in, it's not going to benefit your plants at all. So the soil is finally saturated. It took a while. One of the other things that you can do is to take the entire amount of soil, the entire bag, and moisten it, and then put it in. Not sure which one would be more time consuming or less time consuming. I'm not really sure. So just basically whatever you want to do, just to make sure that your soil is moistened. And so now it's time to plant the seeds. Basically, when I plant tomato seeds, and this is what I'm starting with, I will take my seeds, and of course they're rather tiny, and I will simply, and everybody does it a different way. So I will just take the seeds, and these are pretty tiny. These are the sun sugar, and these will be my 3 that I'm doing just sun sugar. And I just kind of, and I multi-sow, by the way. I don't just put 1 seed per. So I might be doing 3 seeds, just kind of put them, scatter them, and then I just kind of push them down a little bit. Bring a little bit of the soil from the edges, push them down a tiny bit. Don't make them too deep. The other way that some people do it, and it's not a right or wrong, honestly, is putting the seeds on top and just putting soil on top of that. That may or may not be easier, but you can do it either way. So I'm just going to do these 3 with the sun sugar, about 3 per. Push them in a little bit. Make sure they are covered. You don't want them floating on the top. Bring a little bit in from the corners is what I do. So 2 there. Oops, and that looks like it's the end of my sun sugar. So we'll just go ahead and push those in. Okay. And so that one is done. I sure don't have any of those seeds in my hand because I don't want them to be contaminated onto the next the next variety. So these are my Tiffin. These are all seeds that I actually saved. And these are the big pink tomatoes. So I'll do the same thing. Put 3 in. 3 in each. 4 get in, so be it, right? The rest in the book back in here. And then I'll just bring the soil in, push them down a little bit. Make sure they're covered, not floating on top. Really hard to see them in there, especially have the seed starting that has some of the other perlite and all that stuff in it, the little white stuff, because it all looks the same. But as long as you are able to get buried, just kind of take a look and make sure that they are buried in there. But not deep at all. It's really just pressing them in, honestly. 1/16, 1/8 of an inch down or something like that. So now I have my Tiffin over here and my sun sugar over here. Don't forget to label what they are, because that's another problem that I had last year, or maybe the year before, but I didn't label them right, or I didn't label them at all, or whatever, and so then I had no idea what I had. And it's really hard to tell until they fruit. There are some that have pretty distinct leaves. I know the pink Tiffin has very distinct leaf, but some of them are very hard to distinguish. You don't have to have fancy tags, and I don't know if this particular, these came with my trays. You can also use rubbing alcohol sometimes to get the Sharpie off if you want to reuse them the following year. There's some materials that won't come off. I think on this smooth one it will. But you can take any kind of a plastic, make your own. My husband had some plastic the last couple of years. I think it was like a plastic poster board. And he just made me some of these tags, so they work just as well. I don't think they get as clean when you use the rubbing alcohol, but you can still use them. So because I have these, I'm going to use these, but I'll just put sun sugar. I'm not even going to write the word tomato because I know what it is. And I will just go ahead and stick it right in here. And I know this whole row is sun sugar. Get another one. And this just happens to be pink. I didn't pick it on purpose. Pink Tiffin. Also called pink Mennonite. It's just different names for the same thing. So I will stick that in this row. So now I know that each of these rows has been planted. I know what they are. And then what we need to do is get them into the sunny location and get them to germinate. Now I'm going to move on to planting some of the peppers. So at this point, my audio was not working. And what I am doing is getting ready to plant my peppers. And I used actually my preferred method of moistening the soil, which is taking the bag and putting water in a container and moistening the soil that way, and then filling the pots with the soil. And I am also, after I plant the seeds, which I am planting some shishitos and some nadapinos. I am going to put the soil just right on top of the seeds, as before I had covered the seeds by pressing them in. This time I'm just covering them. Thanks for joining me, and until I see you next time, stay rooted. Bye-bye.